7:30 start. Hey, Bill Levity, look at this if you're watching. We're starting earlier than you do on a 7:30 start, and it's only 5 to 8. You know, we used to start earlier when we knew that there was 2 for 1 appy so we could get there in time.
Yeah, but it's gone.
But they canceled that, the turkeys. Oh, wow. Did you get everybody's name who's going to speak?
I believe so, yeah.
Did you? Good. Because I didn't. I know that so it was almost a full, everyone was going to talk. And then one person goes, no, I'm not talking yet. No names mentioned, but that's okay. This is For the Love of Words, for those that are watching tonight on TV. And you know what? A lot of people do. Like when we get 25, 30 hits, that's pretty cool. But it also means it's usually the same people. And the people who do come up on the street and hand me $20 every so often and say, here, I watch a lot. Thank you very much. That's really cool because I know that internet and the YouTube and all that stuff is for free. But, you know, everything's got a cost to it, right? Somehow or other down the line. And even though there's no one magically in the sky paying our wages or paying anything. So if Kevin Houghton's watching tonight, belly up, buddy. We just had a little discussion on Facebook. I love it. Sometimes you can really get underneath someone's skin. And because I got so many people who follow me, they become engaged in it. And the guy has no idea what onslaught's coming towards him, right? I got a really good team. Anyway, Facebook, the art of Facebooking. Writing, right? Getting your point across with the right words. Or in my case, just enough to, anyway, it's fun. Words are a wonderful thing. Bill Levity, the wonderful host of For Love of Words, has got sciatic conditioning taking place. Oh, hear the groans, Bill? That was for you, buddy. All for you, yeah. Well, maybe not all of them. Well, they weren't really all that loud, but 1 or 2 people did give you a groan, buddy. But he looked around trying to find a replacement, and he got a message from Andrew that Andrew would if no one else showed up, he'd do it. But that's not really the case. One of the reasons we went to Andrew because you host another poetry night, don't you?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not like this though.
No, but it's still it's a place where people can gather. That's what the whole thing about this is community, and we just have the ability to broadcast, right? But anytime the community gets together, specifically in poetry or in verse of any kind, to listen to each other and trying to grasp it. I'm amazed after the show, or after what we do every night, every last Tuesday of each month, is the observations that are recalled by the people who were listening. Mm-hmm. Right? They listened intently to what was being said, and that's very cool for someone who's a writer, you know, or someone who has found passages, as Bob does, of people that have moved him, and he thinks that the words written in such a fashion are really a pretty thing to do, a pretty thing to acknowledge, right? Mm-hmm. It's cool. It's all that stuff. Anyway, this guy, he's going to take care of it tonight for us, and I haven't even given you a hard time yet, have I?
I'm just waiting for it.
You got the neatest mustache in the world. You know that?
Thank you. There we go.
No, ever since I saw it, I just went, man, this is class. I grew up in Montreal for part of my teenage years, and it was just like I would expect to see you there.
Well, thank you.
You know, maybe in Westmount, but in downtown as well, and in some of the cafes. I mean, you bring a sense of cavalierness. You and your partner, you both do that as you stroll the streets. There's something engaging and almost out of a book. You know, something that is I would see in a movie out of New York written in the 50s or something. You know? And it's cool. I think that's cool.
Thank you.
And you don't wear laces on your shoes?
No, I haven't mastered that trick yet. Actually.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Most people, just one little observation, Velcro, okay, or slip-ons, why? Short tying shoelaces. Who needs to do that? I'm excelling in somewhere else. Anyway, Andrew, it's your show tonight. You take care.
Thanks, John. That's lovely. Yeah, so I found out about 2 hours ago that I'm hosting. So that's nice of Bill. Unfortunately, he can't make it. He was just down in Mexico, so I think he's probably just still there, and he's using that as an excuse. we'll try to get by without him, I suppose. And the terrible thing is, the next in line typically is John Hatfield. Then he's going to Jerusalem, or he's on his way there now. So you're looking at the third tier host, which is marvelous, but I think we'll get by. Typically there's like a sacrificial poet who has to go first. And I might as well just do that to get it out of the way, then we could get into the swing of things. Yeah. The other thing, what I was saying to John is that the spoken word event that we host at Cafe La Vie, it's quite a bit different, and it is, because it's just people sitting around a room, so there isn't necessarily the microphone and lights and so forth, but also Rachel's there with me, so whenever I forget something, she'll tell me about it, or she'll speak up, and that's, she could come up if, do you want to come up? Shit. All the same, we'll just get it going. Yeah, with the rain and so forth, I'll just read one piece and then we'll pass on the torch. So this is a calm state of mind. So, slightly punch drunk, the branches bend in the rain all day long, outside every window. And then just beside you, this calm state of mind nudges its way into your periphery, as if to start a conversation on the weather or some other trivial manner, as if about to introduce itself and where it can be reached. But still there's her, or him, or this thing, or a headache, or a broken shoelace, or a leaky faucet, which entertains your attention and preoccupies your time. So this calm little state of mind, it finds its own way to the door, and over its spurred shoulder, it advises you to keep on pissing on the world, if you think that's what it takes to make things grow. Yeah, so that's the first piece out of the way. Yes, thank you. I should also mention it's been maybe 3 years since we started coming to this thing. And when I initially started coming to it, you could see the page shaking. Then my voice was obviously shaking and so forth. And I still can't read out loud that well, so whatever the case may be, you're probably in good company if you come up and have the courage to do so. So I hope that works out for everyone. But yeah, so typically I'm going to go with what Bill does, and boy, girl. If you binary, yeah, that another story. So Carol, yeah, if you don't mind. Thank you.
So I only brought one, but I think it's about 5 minutes long. Opening to the awareness of this life, of the conditions of my life, what they are, what they could and can represent, what they mean. There's no reason why. There's no reason why. It's simply an urge to live that curtails upon itself slowly, because another urge takes seed and lives and dies, and each moment lives and dies, each moment lives and dies, yes, but each moment seeds. So seed away, send seeds flying, send seeds going, but see the seed flowing like the never-ending impression the moon makes on the sea, on the water, on earth, on body, on another body, rocking, rolling, like so often happens. Sound waves, waves of joy, waves of grief, waves hello, waves goodbye, waves unseen. There's no reason why. There's no reason why. There's no need for a reason why. Until we start to fight the urge, stop, start, stop, start, out of fear, out of a slice of awareness we've gained from opening up to this open body and feeling it, capturing it, holding it, not letting it go, creating a memory, and thus creating a seed from which all things grow, all things come to be, concepts of togetherness, divinity. Capturing it because it is an urge, an explosion, and thus a collision of two bodies, two beings, becoming one, closer and closer, and the closer gotten, the faster, interrupted. Two dogs, a squeal, high-pitched, unmoving, allowing, so high-pitched, a memory, a snap at another dog, heard about it previously, stop, I don't like it. I don't know what's going on, but I don't like you squealing, and I don't like you biting her, biting each other. Taking a bite, swallowing it. Does the earth maintain a connection to it? Of course, because it's all togetherness. You have a choice. You have awareness, a coming apart, and allowing it. Two pieces into two pieces and never ending. There is an urge, and that's all we know of awareness. There is no reason why the conditions of my life come as they are. To retrace the steps is to retrace steps through infinity, the other direction, the other way. There's no reason why. The conditions of my life come as they are. There are only seeds, concepts of time, grown upon awareness, grown upon an urge that is and isn't, that grows, that lives and dies, that is born of a seed, that captures a memory, built upon a memory, and it just goes on and on and on. It gets smelly. Urges can be perceived in so many ways, through so many senses, that a dog's smell or sound can easily capture our attention, as slow pain is easy enough to redirect awareness in opposites, in directions, ways. Somehow they all have one common thread, one common seed that is life itself. And here I am, here we are, urges. There's no reason why. A shattered glass. The pane of my window to an internet-connected web in space. Hold on to the pieces. They will create the kaleidoscope in which you seek. An urge is building inside me, slowly abrupting my whole existence, breaking me open, enough to let the light, the dreams, the love, to release the dam once and for all. Vehicles realize when you are in reverse. Treading slowly now, not fighting the urge and not siding with it either, allowing it and being aware of it. And that's it.
Thank you. That was really, really lovely. Yeah, both just like the concept of seeds, but also each moment seeds. So like germination and latency, which is really nice. And also sound effects. I'd never think to do that, but it's a great idea. Yeah, well done. And it can be so guttural too, like, yeah, yeah, well done. Yeah, so I suppose we'll just keep going. Um, John, do you feel like coming up and reading? Did you bring anything? Yeah, it'd be lovely to hear some stuff. Yeah, you read at Cafe La Vie as well, and that was really powerful. Yeah.
Good evening. That was a quote from Alfred Hitchcock, by the way. Right. I'll be reading from Eliot's The Wasteland, part 5, the closing part of the long poem. It's fitting to be aware of this poem at this time because we're just approaching the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, 1918. And Eliot wrote this long poem in response to the devastation of that 4-year war in Western Europe. The poem's been described as a gathering of fragments, analogous to the destruction that occurred during those 4 terrible years across Western Europe. Destruction of individual lives, of families, communities, nations, lands. And this poem is itself it includes quotes, images, references to about 40 different authors from ancient times to modern times in 6 different languages in the entire poem, not just in this particular piece that I'm going to read. But it's been said that it's helpful to consider this poem, the poem overall, but including this part, as not a continuous narrative that can be understood in that way, but rather as a collection of fragments from a variety of cultural backgrounds. The section is called "What the Thunder Said." After the torchlight red on sweaty faces, after the frosty silence in the gardens, after the agony in stony places, the shouting and the crying, prison and palace and reverberation of thunder of spring over distant mountains. He who is living now is dead. We who were living now are dying with a little patience. Here is no water but only rock, rock and no water in the sandy road, the road winding above among the mountains, which are mountains of rock without water. If there were water, we should stop and drink. Amongst the rock, one cannot stop or think. Sweat is dry and feet are in the sand, if there were only water amongst the rock. Dead mountain mouth of carious teeth that cannot spit. Here one can neither stand, nor lie, nor sit. There is not even silence in the mountains, but dry, sterile thunder without rain. There is not even solitude in the mountains, but red, sullen faces sneer and snarl from doors of mud-cracked houses. If there were water and no rock, if there were rock and also water, and water, a spring, a pool among the rock, if there were the sound of water only, not the cicada and dry grass singing, but sound of water over a rock where the hermit thrush sings in the pine trees, drip, drop, drip, drop, 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 drop. But there is no water. Who is the third who walks always beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together. But when I look ahead up the white road, there is always another one walking beside you. Gliding, wrapped in a brown mantle, hooded, I do not know whether a man or a woman. But who is that on the other side of you? What is that sound high in the air, murmur of maternal lamentation? Who are those hooded hordes swarming over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth, ringed by the flat horizon only? What is the city over the mountains? Cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air, falling towers. Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London, unreal. A woman drew her long black hair out tight and fiddled whisper music on those strings. And bats with baby faces in the violet light whistled and beat their wings and crawled head downward down a blackened wall. And upside down in air were towers tolling reminiscent bells that kept the hours, and voices singing out of empty cisterns and exhausted wells. In this decayed hole among the mountains in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing over the tumbled graves about the chapel. There is the empty chapel, only the wind's home. It has no windows and the door swings. Dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood on the roof tree, cocorico, cocorico. And a flash of lightning, and a flash of lightning, then a damp gust bringing rain. Ganga was sunken, and the limp leaves waited for rain while the black clouds gathered far distant over Himavant. The jungle crouched, humped in silence. Then spoke the thunder. Da, Datta, what have we given? My friend, blood shaking my heart. The awful daring of a moment's surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract. By this and this only we have existed, which is not to be found in our obituaries, or in memories draped by the beneficent spider, or under seals broken by the lean solicitor in our empty rooms. Dayadvam. I have heard the key turn in the door once and turn once only. We think of the key, each in his prison. Thinking of the key, each confirms a prison. Only at nightfall, ethereal rumors revive for a moment, a broken Coriolanus. Damyata. The boat responded gaily to the expert hand with sail and oar. The sea was calm. Your heart would have responded gaily when invited, beating obedient to controlling hands. I sat upon the shore fishing, with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my lands in order? London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. Poi scusi nel fuoco geglia fina. Then he ascended in the fire that refined him. Quando fiam ceo gelidon, O swallow, swallow, when shall I become like the swallow? Le prince d'Aquitaine à la tour abolie, the prince of Aquitaine in the tower abolished. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Why then I'll fit you. Hieronymo's mad again. Datta, Dayadvam, Danyata, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thanks, John. That was a really great presentation. I'm always surprised, well, not surprised, but sort of baffled that you do your presentation and the timbre and so forth. It's like listening to an audiobook, but you're there, which makes it doubly exciting. Yeah, and sort of the alliterations and internal rhymes in T.S. Eliot really pulled it off. There's that one image that really stuck out, bats with baby faces. Yeah, it's interesting how the words can really invoke something deeply terrifying sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, do you think, like, in order to be a really good writer, you need to be a really good reader at the same time? Probably, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting how he also brings in, like, London Bridge is falling down, so that sort of nursery rhyme. So the high and the low is there as well, right? Yeah. Yeah, well done. So this is also the other terrifying thing, is that to follow T.S. Eliot, I don't envy anyone here. So I'll just read two to take the bullet, and then we'll move on. So at the present time, I work for a local roofing company. And it's not terribly interesting work, but the folks that you meet, both the sort of homeowners and the people you work with, can be interesting. So throughout this whole process, it's been about 4 years now, I just do a couple case studies. So I'll share one with you. He's not my favorite person, but it's called The First Time That I Met Ryan. So women, he said, are like linoleum. You lay 'em once and walk all over them for years. Ain't that right, Mr. Mustachio? Looks like you know your way around some good hookers and some good blow. And it's 8 in the morning, and we've only just been introduced, and already I dislike you. And I've neither had enough sleep or coffee to tolerate it. Your chewing gum tobacco spits or your eloquent quips. Ryan, if you ever look in a full-length mirror and find not much there, if you're ever overtaken by self-disgust, you've every right to. And it rained all day, so I hope you're warm tonight. It'll help you acclimatize yourself to the howling winds of hell. Yeah, I'm kind of known for my spite pieces, actually. Yeah, and it literally was one of those mornings, and I think that's the first thing that he said, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, man, can't take it. Yeah, it's, he pops up every once in a while, eh?
Just don't be around.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to go about it. I think also don't tell them that you write poetry. But so another thing that Bill does is he likes to roast people before they come up. And I kind of need to do it right now. Because Greg, I've heard you read twice. Have you only read twice?
A few more times.
Okay. But once was like really, really heartfelt and really magnificent. And then the other time, because when people come up, it's like emotions or like really great literary figures and like kind of heavy stuff. And he read Frank Zappa, which took everyone by surprise, I think, and Rodriguez. And both were magnificent. But it was interesting because typically Deb reads. So I think that was the first time that I heard you read. and you came out with like the heavy psychedelic folk rock, which is magnificent. But you're here to read again. And it's, I'll let you introduce it. This is Greg.
Yes, I don't read often. I leave that up to Deb mainly because she's the good writer. And anyways, first, I guess I have to deal with the issue of Bill being away. And one of the things is that, you know, when I had, with my boys, when they were young and they had an owie or something, you coddled them and stuff like that. But then as they grew older and stuff like that, you sort of had to move away from that. And so then the advice for Bill is the same thing that I was giving my boys when they were older. And that's, if you want sympathy around here, it's found in the dictionary somewhere between shit and syphilis. So anyways, that's for you, Bill. And okay, I'm going to read something a little bit different. I'm learning how to write scripts. I like to hide behind the camera every so often and make independent films with people around here. All right, it's a lot of fun, but you'll find a script is very different. You can't overwrite yourself because you can write yourself into a corner where you can't actually make it. So you don't get into all the beautiful flowery words of descriptions of the scene and stuff because that might not exist. And so that's left up to the director and the director of photography, your set designer, and things like that. So you have to just get the skeleton, really, is what you do when you write a script. So I'm just going to read the first scene of a script I'm working on, and it's called Trust Me. Jenny, a 14-year-old girl, is placing a willow branch fish trap in a stream. She does this with confidence of someone who's adept at the skill. She's closed like a runaway who's been hiding out in the woods for too long. At the sound of a twig snapping, Jenny reflexes bring her to a defensive stance. She's hyper-alert, looking for the source. 3 young attackers come charging out of the woods towards the river. Their clothes are dirty and worn. Their hair is unkempt like a gang of young thugs who don't respect themselves. Jenny dashes for the sanctuary of the woods on the opposite side of the river. Quick on her feet, she dodges trees and clears the fallen logs that litter the forest floor. A foot chase ensues through the forest. The men are fast on their feet and equally nimble. They hunt her like a pack of wolves, each one of them knowing their role in catching their prey. Jenny spots a small cabin in the woods. She bolts for it, hoping to find safety. She misses a shovel laying on the ground. Her toe catches it, sending her to the ground. Beside her are 3 mounds of dirt that are obviously graves, 1 the size of an adult, and 2 are the size of small children. A 4th open grave is the corpse of a woman. All 3 young men pounce upon their prey. Jenny continues to struggle and fight to the best of her ability. The men are just too powerful for her. The first attacker and the third attacker hold her down. The first attacker lowers his face to hers. The second attacker stands and undoes his belt. The inevitable is about to play out. Attacker 1 slowly licks the side of her face. A dull thud is heard, and the 2 holding Jenny down look to see an arrow shaft protruding from the chest of the second attacker. As the 2 remaining men look at each other, another arrow pierces the chest of the third attacker. The first attacker rises up and turns to run as the second attacker falls on top of Jenny. Sorry about all the attackers here. And an arrow finds its mark in the back of the first attacker. John, a mountain of a man, wizened and serious, hauls the body of the second attacker off Jenny. Jenny scrambles to get away, but John grabs her by the ankle, keeping her in place. Jenny draws a knife from behind her back, wielding it at John's face. Put that damn thing away before you hurt yourself. Just then, attacker 3 gets up. In a flash, Jenny lashes out with the knife, stabbing him in the thigh. The motion breaks her free from John's grasp. John re-grabs her leg. Jenny spins back with a knife at the ready. Let me go. John lets go of her leg, and one smooth motion disarms her and slices into the femoral artery of the third attacker. John flips the knife in the air, catching it by the blade, and holds it out to Jenny. Kill them, don't just wound them. Jenny tries to go back away, but winces in pain. The end of an arrow shaft protrudes from her upper leg where it broke off from the second attacker's chest. John motions to the arrow shaft. I think you're going to want some help with that. Jenny places her palm on top of the exposed shaft, looks directly at John, and then with a quick push, the arrowhead exits her leg. The pain surprises her, and she cries out.
That was nice. You're kind of a moving target, man. It's like... Yeah, but again, like before, words creating imagery so you could really see it. Yeah. So is it all done now?
Yeah, it's a short, it's just a 9-page script. It's for a competition that's Cinevic in Victoria's putting on for 9-page scripts. And if there's 5 scripts picked, then you have to go and pitch it. And if you succeed at that, then they give you some production money and you get to produce it.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
So that's the first act?
Yeah, that's the first act.
So next month, are you going to do the second act?
To do the second act, there's enough dialogue that you really need some actors to pull it off.
I think Bob Nation volunteered, though. We could probably help you out, hopefully. Speaking of the devil, Bob, did you bring? Yeah, you were telling me a little bit about it before. Do you want to?
Change the pace? No, I'm not doing the one I told you about.
Okay. Bob Nation, everyone.
I was talking to Andrew about an exciting book from Africa, from the slums in Zimbabwe. But I'm going to read something entirely different. This is a book about 30 years old, First People, First Voices. It doesn't matter that it's 30 years old because it's literature in a broad sense from Canadian Indigenous people, some 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and some 20th century. But the old stuff is the interesting stuff. And there's all kinds of stuff. I haven't read the whole book for sure. There's a big section of Christians because Indians who became missionaries or converted tended to learn lots of English compared to their predecessors because they got all involved in Western education. And so I skipped all that stuff, but in fact I found some of it interesting when I peeked in the other day. And there's a whole lot of oratory of people or in the prairies around Louis Riel's time, which is really entertaining and articulate and funny, but it's very political. So I'll do something totally unpolitical tonight. Oh, there was a good piece also from McQuina, the chief McQuina, justifying the potlatch. And he's very articulate. It's a beautiful thing. But I'll leave all that. I'll give you this man called George Copway, written about 150 years ago. He was in Ojibwe. He became a Methodist minister and later became Roman Catholic. I don't know why. And he was a lecturer, a preacher, an author, a herbal doctor. the first Canadian Indian to publish a book in English. And he was certainly good at English. It was published in Philadelphia in 1847. And it took off, 6 editions, and he became a celebrity. They reprinted 6 years later. He toured the U.S. and Europe. So he's very master of English, for sure. Biting satire, they said, pungent anecdote, strokes of wit and honor, touches of pathos. So in 2 minutes, I'll try to give you a little bit of all that, which is impossible. 2 pieces. One is about nature. He was very connected to the wilderness, as we call it, which was his home. This little piece about where he was born, near the Trent River, outside of Peterborough, if you don't know that area. And another piece about language. And we're doing flow for the love of words. And this is a language that he says flow is really beautiful. So that's interesting to me. So first of all, he's talking about his birthplace, and this is from his book. I remember the tall trees and the dark woods, the swamp just by where the little wren sang so melodiously after the going down of the sun in the west, the current of the broad river Trent, the skipping of the fish and the noise of the rapids a little above. It was here I first saw the light. I guess I should say, it was here I first saw the light. A little fallen down shelter made of evergreens and a few dead embers, the remains of the last fire that shed its genial warmth around, were all that marked the spot. When I last visited it, nothing but fir poles stuck in the ground, and they were leaning on account of decay. In this dear spot, made green by the tears of memory, any less enticing and hallowed than the palaces where princes are born. I would much rather glory in this birthplace, with the broad canopy of heaven above me and the giant arms of forest trees for my shelter, than to be born in palaces of marble studded with pillars of gold. Nature will be nature still, while palaces shall decay and fall in ruins. Yes, Niagara will be Niagara 1,000 years hence. And there's lots more. So he sort of writes richly and strongly. But another aspect of him is that George Copway was immensely proud of the Ojibwe language. A person might have traveled, he said, nearly 1,000 miles from the lake, ahead of Lake Superior, and not journey away from the sound of this dialect, he declared. He praised the musical qualities of the language, and he cited another writer who observed that Ojibwe had a force of expression with music in its words and poetry in their meaning. So here's his words from the book. I cannot express fully the beauty of the Ojibwe language. After reading the English language, I have found words in the Indian combining more expressiveness. There are many Indian words which, when translated into English, lose their force and do not convey so much meaning in one sentence as the original does in one word. It would require an almost infinitude of English words to describe a thunderstorm. And after all, you would have but a feeble idea of it. In the Ojibwe language, we say, Biwa Samurg. In this, we convey the idea of continual glare of lightning, noise, confusion, an awful whirl of clouds, and much more. And observe the smoothness of the words. Anungoka, the starry heavens. Obedience, Baba Mitum. Soul, Chebam. The rippling waves, Digu Watha. Raven, Ga-ga-ge. Woodpecker, Papa-se. Heaven, Ishpeming. All, Ka-kena. There's quite a few here. Unbelief, Yanutam. Streams, Zibiwon. The water words often have si in them, or si-sa. from the rippling effect, the sound, imitating the sound. So words for river, lake, and so on, streams, sound a little bit similar to each other. Upon examination, it will be found that there are several English letters not sounded, to wit, F, L, and R, V, X, and I think others. All the softness of the vowels are sounded without many of the harsh notes of the consonants, and this produces that musical flow of words for which the language is distinguished. And I just comment there that it's it's a great contrast with Hulkaminam and the local languages, as far as I know, any scraps of them, that they are cluttered with consonants. You can hardly learn to speak them. They've got way more consonants, and they're all stuck together without any vowels. I've got a model of North America in my mind that it was tipped up to give us the population because all the people in eastern Canada and all end up in BC, and people flow out to California. They're all sort of sloping down into the west. And it seems like that happened in the languages. All the consonants seem to have left the east and ended up in these Indian languages around here. Oh, I'll give you one more word before I leave it. The word for the river that he was born near is Sagida Wage Warnung, and we call it Trent. So there's a little peak at George Copway. There are many, many little peaks in this book. I really love it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. That was really great. Yeah, Bob is an excellent person to talk to about Indigenous things around here. The book that you recommended for me, Those Who Fell from the Sky?
Yes, Those Who Fell from the Sky.
Yeah, that was magnificent, just about the Cowichan tribes and so forth. And what's interesting with that one, as we were talking about before, is that different landmarks, natural landmarks throughout the area, are intrinsically tied to the whole mythos and sort of creation stories and so forth of the Cowichan people. And that was one of the grating things that I found just before you mentioned it, is that it seems about when people talk about Indigenous cultures, it's a blanket term, so it doesn't necessarily take into account the variants as you're talking about with Ojibwe versus the languages around here. So it was great to read something that was specifically Cowichan. Yeah, so wonderful resource. And then that brings into the whole problem from what you were reading about translation and how to sort of gather meaning from a different language, which could be, I like to geek out about stuff like this because like bilingual editions, and you could see how they didn't get the word right, or different translations could mean completely different things. So that's another interesting thing about language and languages, I suppose.
Especially when the cultures are far apart.
Yeah.
Different translators make completely contradictory versions to the previous one that had come out.
Yeah, and it skews your whole impression of, and especially if you're talking about flow, right? And rhythm and all the rest. Yeah. It's craziness. Anyone else want to read? Anyone want to rant? Insults to give? All right. Well, considering I get to host this, and hopefully for the last time, I'll read maybe 2 more and then we'll do something else with the night. Yeah, so this is just about a fellow that I met. I've known for about 3 years, but it's in very specific situations. No, luckily. God damn, thank you. No, completely different kind of guy, which is nice, yes. Um, but he's an older fellow, and there's a book that I really, really, really enjoyed when I was growing up by Hermann Hesse called Steppenwolf, and it's about this really lonely, sort of existential fella in Germany, and can't make heads or tails of it. Steppenwolf, the wolf of steppes, which is supposed to be like the lone wolf. But Steppenwolf sounds a lot cooler than lone wolf, I think. But that's how he always stood out in my head. So instead of outing him, I just said Steppenwolf. And it's called Steppenwolf, conveniently enough. So yeah. Steppenwolf, who'd have thought the ashrams would have found you here? Surviving on grifting southern churches and chants, with your torched temples and soot-colored portraits, with your deep, deep shadow and bellowing laugh. Who'd have thought you'd have found yourself here? Knowing India is not an entity, not a fetishized commodity, not even a possibility. Simply a state of mind, a pleasant state of mind. So go there when need be and be well. And as for myself, I incorporate cigarettes into breathing techniques and breathing techniques into cigarette breaks. And on my better days, I take to cartography, marvel at old growth of monistic vows, three-finger delights, and cognitive dissonance. Oh, page is stuck. That's embarrassing. And when all else fails, I just readjust my glasses until things make sense. But that's all besides the matter. So let's just say it's a disease. All inherited genes and levels of dopamine. The curious turn of mind, just a chemical imbalance. And the hard calcified hurt in the stretch of your stomach, in the whole of your heart, is just a deficiency of vitamin D and sunlight. Let's just say it's just an illness, something like cancer or the common flu, an odd flux of serotonin and reptilian glands. Elsewise, it's all unconceivably complicated and all unconceivably sad. And all the while, the kitchen plays host to flies, while the cupboards remain bare. Yeah, that's kind of a sad one. Ooh. So Leonard Cohen just came out with a new book, even though he's not around anymore. And I picked it up, and it's interesting because the first half is all poetry, and the second half, the first third is all poetry, and the second third is song lyrics, and the last bit is all just from his personal journals, like stuff that he couldn't finish before he died. And the last bit was by far, for me anyhow, the most interesting bit, because you got to see how he was working. So it's all works in progress, and especially with his rhymes and so forth. Yeah, it's probably considering it was so unpolished, you got to see the craftsman at work, which was really interesting. Yeah, so it was lovely. So I will end with a Leonard Cohen poem. It's not from that, but it's a good one. So yeah, thank you to the showroom, and thank you to John. Hopefully he's kicking about. And hopefully you guys will have Bill next month, because that'd be magnificent. And also thanks to you guys for reading. Round of applause to all you people who read. Okay, this is To a Teacher, and then I guess we could call it after this. hurt once and for all into silence, a long pain enduring without a song to prove it. And who could stand before you so close to Eden, when you glinted in every eye the high-held razor, shivering every lamb and sun? And now the silent loony bin, where the shadows lived in the rafters like day-weary bats, until the turning mind, a radier signal, lures them to exaggerate mountainsides on the high stone wall, your tiny limp. How could I leave you in such a house? Are there no more saints and wizards to praise their ways with pupils no less evil to stun with a slap of a white-red tongue? Did you confuse the Messiah in the mirror and rest because he had finally come? Let me cry help beside you, teacher. I have entered under this dark roof as fearlessly as a time-honored son enters his father's house. Leonard Cohen. Hey. All right. Thanks, everyone.